We just cleared the northwest section of Dalton by 700 hours the next day. It had rained all day and we're all soaked to the bone. We had received heavy artillery and mortar fire from the Dotland, and as we encircled it, the forward rifle position came under direct fire from the two German 40 millimeter anti-craft guns as they would advance up the road. The firing was coming from our right front, 100 yards from where I had just positioned one of our guns. Calhoun was caught in the deadly fire, and several rounds hit him, ricocheting off the ground. I was scouting another gun position when I turned. As I hugged the ground, I saw Calhoun take a direct hit to his upper body. I immediately crawled over to where he was lying, but he was gone. So Calhoun never made it. He was a good fighter, though, very aggressive. The 40 millimeter shell hit him in the upper chest area and made a large hole as it exited his body. I thought of the dream he had the other night and a premonition he had of getting shot. I felt terrible about losing Calhoun, and his death reminded me of Fink and how devastated I was then. So Calhoun had a dream just last night that he got shot.
Yeah, that was it.
And that was it. And he was only a 19-year-old farm guy, right?
Yeah.
From Alabama, right? I put Shepard on the gun and moved one of the last two ammo barrels to the assistant gunner. I helped them pull the gun out and locate it to its new position out of the line of fire of the anti-aircraft guns. Sniper fire increased, and the 1st and 2nd platoons of the rifle company rushed over out of a knoll into the town. The remaining 2 platoons, we were pinned for most an hour and finally withdraw to a farmhouse to the rear. How many men in a platoon?
Men in a platoon? 36.
Wow. We located our gun on a high ridge, but we were still fairly protected from sniper fire as well as the anti-aircraft fire. We kept up a constant tempo of firing the German gun positions, moving around wherever we spotted them. We finally got into town late that afternoon. Sniper fire from the northern part of town and machine gun and mortar fire from the east side of Dortmund S. Canal. We were told to seek shelter and wait until the rifle company cleared out the snipers. It took them a past dark to silence them, and finally about 21:20 hours, the sniping ceased. Seeking out a house in town, we prepared to bed down for the night. The house had been cleared of civilians, and the last civilian was an extremely elderly woman in a small attic bedroom. I carried her down and placed her in a cart to be wheeled away for her relatives. Now, this elderly lady that was
Up in the attic?
Was she able to walk?
No.
All skin and bones?
Yeah, she was alone. Well, probably her husband got killed.
Yeah. And about how old you say she was?
I said 70, 80 years old.
So where'd you put her, in a cart?
No, I put her in a Jeep and took her back to the medics.
I placed her in a cart to be wheeled away by her relatives. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Claire. Come on over, Claire.
Let's see. Get her next to him so I'll get a picture of both of them.
Come on over, Claire.
Well, there she is. How you doing, Claire?
Come on over.
Come on. We got a chair reserved for you. There she is, Claire.
Are you managing without managing?
No, I don't think so.
I didn't think it would.
There she is, Claire.
Should I sit down?
Sure, go ahead. Be careful.
What?
How you doing, Claire?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
You're looking well. We didn't see you yesterday.
Yeah, date.
We didn't see you yesterday.
I'm trying to remember what I did.
And we didn't see you for Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day.
Oh, well, thank you.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
We were looking for you.
I was around.
Okay, we just didn't bump into you. Okay, I'm still reading, and the chapter, it's Patrols on the Rhine, it's VE Day, and they're still in heavy combat. That's fired, that's where I'm at right
It's
now.
not VE Day quite yet. They're still fighting.
Okay.
Had word not gotten out to them, or just the
The Americans are taking over now. The
They're in
Americans,
Germany and they're fighting back all the Germans inside Germany.
messy?
Messy.
seeking out a house, we prepared to bed down for the night. The house was cleared of civilians, and the last civilian was an extremely elderly woman in a small attic bedroom. I carried her down and placed her in a cart to be wheeled away by her relatives. Seeking the house, I lighted a fire in the kitchen fireplace to warm up and dry out our wet clothes. Battalion was sending out detail with ammo, dry clothes, mostly socks and K rations. Mint for it. Butterscotch for it. They dared not risk a kitchen truck as the conditions in town were too unstable. Strangely, we were told not to set up our guns in a defensive position, but to get some rest, and the rifle companies would pull security around the town. In all the excitement and confusion this afternoon, I forgot to take a dog tag from Calhoun's body, but did mention him to the medic that afternoon. So when Calhoun got killed, one of your number one gunners, you forgot to rip one dog tag and leave the other one on his neck.
Yeah.
There was nothing else to do but to change our wet clothes and try to make ourselves as comfortable as possible and get some rest. We did find some comforters and blankets in the house, and we put them to good use. I wonder how that elderly lady whom I carried out of the house was making out. I ate a K ration, made some German coffee, and had found in a cupboard and shared it with three remaining members of the squad. We were soon all asleep and slept uninterrupted the rest of the night. That afternoon, the 2nd Battalion reconnected a canal crossing of a blown bridge. In the meantime, a mechanized task force of the 289th Infantry had reached the canal, having moved into darkness the previous night through a wooded area. The 290th Infantry reached the canal by 2:20 p.m. In the progress, slowed frequent minefields and roadblocks. The division continued its defense of the west bank of the Dortmund-Enns Canal and Swing Canal, preparatory to an assault crossing on 4th April. I had not received any replacements, nor did I request any. I knew those in charge would read MR's morning reports and know the present strength of the platoon and squad. Because we're in this position of always being in a state of detachment from our company, we were afforded the luxury of not having to put up with the nonsense of the company headquarters. Our Playboy company commander was probably aware of our condition, but he either did not wish to be bothered with it, or he did not want to rock the boat and alienate himself from the top brass at battalion headquarters. Either way, I was perfectly content to operate as long as we were supplied with ammo and a hot meal occasionally. We knew that we're going to jump off and cross the canal at any time now. Finally, on 4 April, we made an initial assault. We supported Company E, met with German resistance on the East Bank, and established a bridgehead before daylight. The 275th Engineer Battalion repaired the bridge, the canal, over our bridgehead, and then companies I, L, and F passed through the screen at 0100 hours. Exploiting the small bridgehead company E he had made the night before. How many soldiers in a company?
How many soldiers in the company? 400.
Wow.
300, 400.
Wow. A vertical embankment was such that the assaulting infantry had to use ladders and ropes. Vehicles were unable to cross most of the day, but troops crossed on wooden ramps. Once they were across, a perpendicular wall 16 feet high barred their way. 15-foot ladders were used to enable the infantry to climb the wall. Eventually, the engineers blew down the canal's concrete embankment, and the dozers shoved the dirt into the canal, making the causeway for the troops and the vehicles to cross on. And while there were no sporadic enemy artillery and self-propelled gunfire, we were set up in the woods affording supporting fire, and we were receiving heavy artillery and mortar fire. Luckily, we found some abandoned German bunkers and utilized them for cover until we moved out with the assaulting troops crossing the canal. Tunnel was carrying out a tripod, and so I wound up with it, at the same time struggling with my M1 across my chest. As we crossed the canal on the wooden ramps, we were getting sniper and machine gun fire. Did you have to climb that 15-foot ladder?
Yeah.
They were coming from two houses.
That's probably a rope ladder.
A rope ladder.
Yeah.
Okay, that was even harder. A rope ladder was even harder. Okay. We stopped at a creek with the artillery troops and secured all the bridges into Ikern. We moved ahead with the assault troops and secured all the bridges on the Autobahn except one. A rifleman shot the German who had blown it up. The Germans were firing flat trajectory guns at us from the main road leading into Ikren from the northeast. We set up and began firing at the guns and put several of them out of action. The riflemen took care of the rest. As we advanced and secured the Autobahn east of Ikren, we ran into another factory. We raced into the second-story window and began firing, watching the Germans scattered out to the front. We were getting small armed fire, but we were well protected by the thick walls of the factory. A half-track came alongside our window and made a short work of the remaining Germans in the immediate vicinity.
What was that? What was that thing that you just said? What was the...
A half-track.
What's a half track?
Half track, half of a tank.
Oh.
It's got moving wheels.
Just a second.
Were half tracks common? Were half tracks common?
Oh yeah, they're on both sides. Both sides have them, yeah. Half track. That was for mud and snow and everything else.
Okay.
They were treaded. They weren't wheels. They were treaded.
Treaded.
They got more traction.
And Lieutenant Smith, 3rd Platoon Leader of the G Company, told us to set up our gun to fire to our rear and wait for his orders. He then scampered along with several riflemen down the ditch. Within 5 minutes he was back telling us to get ready to fire. Upon his order, we fired right down the ditch, and we could see Germans attempting to climb out of the ditch to avoid our fire. The Germans on the opposite side started firing at the second platoon of the G Company, flanked them and put them in crossfire. We swung the gun around, hoping to catch any Germans fleeing to the side. Most of them were either killed or taken prisoner. We got into Henkerberg. The enemy was firing 88 millimeters anti-tank guns point blank at us. We set up a base of fire on the gun crew, and a squad of riflemen crawled up and along the hedgerow and killed the gun crew. We kept on moving and reached the railroad station at Hohenhorst that night. We stayed in an abandoned flour mill along with the 2 squads of men of G Company. We slept on piles of straw found in an adjoining barn and took turns on guard duty. We had not seen Post for several weeks, and I wondered if he was all right. A jeep from G Company brought us some K rations, and the rumor was that we'd be jumping off again tomorrow morning. You're always on the go.
Yeah.
Always on the go. I lay down on a pile of straw, too exhausted to think about anything, and soon fell asleep. I was awakened at 0300 hours to pull 2 hours of guard duty. As I stood there crouched in a foxhole, I thought about the morning and the short hours and the attack of 0700 hours. At 0200 hours the same day, Field Order Number 15 came down from headquarters, 16th Corps, setting 4th and 3rd phase of the campaign. The 75th Infantry Division was to slash down the Ruhr River just west of Dortmund, preventing the enemy movement between Dortmund and the west. The 17th Airborne Division on the 79th right and the 35th Infantry Division between it, the 17th Airborne, and the 75th Infantry Division would aid and assist. To direct the new phase, Division Headquarters moved to Mecklenburg.
Hey, quick question, John. With all these movements here, how did you remember? Was that something that you would write down, or was that
Right, movement.
all the different companies that were moving here or moving there? How did you remember all that? Was it just
Well, you only talk about maybe 4 or 5, 6 companies.
Yeah.
And you're in immediate contact with them all the time.
so you remember it all? Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
You're not taking notes, I know.
No, you're not taking notes. Not right then.
the company commander, but you said Lape kept a journal.
Huh?
You said Lape kept a journal.
Late?
Yeah, you said he kept a journal.
Yeah, but he was a driver.
Okay.
He was 2 miles behind.
The company commander of G Company as Captain Chatfield. You remember Captain Chatfield?
Yeah.
How was he?
Young guy, West Point.
Was he a good soldier?
Well, up to now, yeah.
Was at a makeshift depot made up of old crates with kerosene lanterns affording the only light. He studied detailed maps and roster reports. He offered me some hot coffee, in which I accepted, and told me that he was putting what was left of my squad in with his squad, the 1st Platoon. We would still have heavy 30, but it would afford us more manpower in the form of ammo bearers. He also stated that I would have to fill in as a gunner with Tuttle and my assistant and with the rest of the 2nd Squad. Platoon as ammo bearers, I would also be the squad leader, as the 2nd Squad was short a sergeant. He realized I had not gotten my stripes. Here we go again, you're not gotten your stripes. But he chalked it up to a mass confusion back at battalion headquarters. We would still be functioning as a heavy weapons squad, providing supporting fire for the riflemen. Even though under unusual circumstances, it appeared that it would probably be the best solution for a complex situation. I finished my coffee. We each made some small talk. Then I departed from the flour mill to inform the squad of our change of plans. They took it as a matter of course and stated that we were fortunate to get the extra man. I was a little perturbed at the last tirade But what did disturb me is that no one was looking after our interest. I had been acting squad leader, acting section leader, and at times acting platoon leader, but still had not received one single promotion. It seems like you could do something about that.
Yeah.
I kept on thinking of Larson and his rapid promotion to the staff back in the battalion, and it made it even more resentful and offended. I would admonish myself for not speaking up and demanding the stripes, but would invariably recoil. Each time I would think of my brothers and how they would take or whatever they wanted to do, despite the consequences they befell anyone. I did not want to be like them. But I had no one acting on my behalf, so I'd have to suffer the aftermath of my behavior. After 30 minutes artillery preparation, the division attacked at 0700 hours. We set up a base of fire, and I let Tuttle do the actual firing, as he needed the experience. I scouted for alternative positions. We had not gone 50 yards when we found ourselves pinned down by heavy enemy fire, utilizing artillery, self-propelled guns, and anti-aircraft weapons. I spotted and abandoned a farmhouse and hurried the squad into it, hoping that the German artillery did not have it zeroed in. It was finally repulsed by our own artillery and mortars. Having spotted and zeroed in on the German position, I found an alternative position for the gun and dispatched Tuttle and the squad to it. On the right of the 2nd Battalion, 201st Infantry, I found itself pinned down by heavy enemy fire. The counterattack by enemy paratroopers with supporting artillery and self-propelled guns was repulsed by a combination of several things our troops devised. Tuttle was doing a great job on a gun, and I began to depend on him more than a good judgment seemed necessary. It seemed that whenever I started to depend on someone, something invariably happened, and I usually lost him to one way or the other. I dismissed the thought, hoping that this time would be different. The riflemen from G Company were just great. I only wished I had more of them. We were coming up on Duzen when we started to receive a tank infantry counterattack. I could hear the familiar rumble and squeak of the bogie wheels. They were Mark IVs heading in our direction. I told Tuttle to pull the gun out and that we were going into a more protective position. I could hear our 105s and 155s going overhead as they weaved across the attacking tanks of the infantry. Our own 81 millimeter mortars opened up.
Did those work good, the 81 millimeters?
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Making a dull whooshing sound as they hurled overhead. The men from G Company were situated in abandoned foxholes, awaiting further orders. We had ample ammunition for the time being, and I told them to stay put and watch for snipers among all the artillery. The Germans were using something I had not seen since the Battle of Bulge, Schwarzenpauschen wagons,
What are those?
armored half-tracks with flamethrowers mounted on them. So now you're seeing, at this position where you're at, German half-tracks mounted with flamethrowers. Did you come in contact with them?
Yeah, yeah.
Were they easily put out by the Americans?
That flamethrower was so 50 feet.
And mostly at foxholes, right?
Yeah.
That must have been a very dangerous weapon. What did the flamethrowers work on? Gasoline?
Yeah.
Even so, our machine gun fire was useless against the half-tracks and tanks. Our only hope would arrive from some Shermans or air power. The armored half-tracks had worried me, and I did not want any part of them. The men from G Company, whose name I did not even know, were returning with ammo. I cautioned them to stay low and watch for snipers. I did not want to lose any of them. I felt more than responsible for their well-being. I heard the clatter of more tanks. Could it be the Schwarzen version wagons? looking for us as they spotted our position. As they came over the ridge, I was relieved to see there was a platoon of Shermans buttoned up and firing their short, stubby 75s as they sought shelter of their position. One parked 50 yards to the right of our position. It was reassuring to have its presence afford us such protective cloud over us. I knew the armored half-track would not engage a Sherman in a frontal attack, and I only hoped that the tank commander would see him first. The attacking Germans started to close in on us, and I gave Tuttle the word to open up on them. The Sherman next to us started firing its turret-mounted machine guns, as well as its 75 millimeter cannon. What size are the machine gun calibers in a tank?
What, tanks?
Caliber. What
30.
30s? And about how many rounds does each tank have of machine gun?
Oh, they could put in three or four different stripes in there, tags.
Wow. So they were well equipped.
Yeah,
Do those tanks run on gasoline or diesel?
gasoline.
Wow. Tuttle would open up on them. The Sherman tank started firing its turret-mounted machine guns as well as the 75 millimeter cannon. It started to scatter Germans as they saw protection from our firing and attempted to flank our tankers. Our own artillery was practically on the top of the position, and I was fearful of friendly fire. Our own artillery shells landing on our position. Our mortar and artillery barrage intensified and repulsed the counterattack. We found out later that the enemy counterattack consisted of the 2nd Parachute Division and the 180th and 190th Wehrmacht Divisions. We had lost 2 of the Company G riflemen in the artillery exchange, and 2 were completely wounded severely. This left us with where before we took the Company G replacements. It was thought by many, including me, that this was the stubborn opposition by the enemy was the scene of some of the toughest, fiercest fighting since the Ardennes and the Bulge. Most of it was fought by the 3rd and 2nd Parachute Regiments of the 2nd Parachute Division. Despite the fierce opposition, we cleared the Castro Rocks area that night and set up roadblocks in defensive position on our right flank. Again, we borrowed troops from Company G to roadblock during the night. There were 2-man shifts that would change every 2 hours. Tuttle and I were split up between the men of the G Company. We were afforded the luxury of a telephone wire, something we have not seen in quite a while, and were fortunate to occupy an abandoned bunker completely with overhead logs and earth, enough for 2 men and a gun. Tuttle pulled the first 2 hours with a man from G Company, and I would be awakened at 300 hours for my turn along with someone from G Company. We were occupying a small farmhouse next to our gun position, and we felt pretty secure as the Shermans were next to the farmhouse. That's it?
For right now, we got
All right, shut up. I want to finish the chapter.
What?
Well, we're gonna
I want to-
switch the tape?
Yeah, we're going to stand by. We're going to switch the tape.
Okay, and then,
I need a
so,
pen.
okay, we'll get the pen.
Let's switch the tape.
So that was pretty interesting. You ended up at that farmhouse there, and you felt pretty secure.
You're not
Yeah.
live right now, are you?
Yeah,
You're live?
yeah.
I thought you had no time.
I'm just about up. So I was just gonna get a few more words.
Okay.
So, you guys bunkered, you stayed there tonight?
In the farmhouse?
Yeah.
Under protest, yeah.
Why was it under protest?
Well, we should be outside.
You always wanna be outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, okay, again tomorrow.
No, I'm going to finish this tonight. I'm